Welcome to my photography business channel. My name is Rosh. This video is all about pricing your photography. Now, if you've not seen the video previous to this one on the cost of doing business, I highly recommend you take a look at it because it'll give you a foundation before we dive in to pricing your photography. The cost of doing business video and this video are two videos out of a series of 31 videos that I put together over the month of May and put them in a playlist to support you, to help you grow your business and run your business, to help you think differently about the photography business. For those of you who are interested in growing your business, well, the next video we get even deeper into the topic of growing your photography by using the solar system method. Now let's get right into pricing your photography. You know, one of the best things you can do is to prepare ahead of time for success when pricing your photography. The thing is, we often run into situations where we're not really sure how to approach the photography project. It's new to us. We've never faced it before. Trust me, this is common. It's not new. It's going to happen to you, and it's okay. Don't panic. But the thing is, it's going to be a lot easier if you actually plan ahead and really understand the best practices of pricing. Then when a new project comes in front of you, no problem. You'll have the tools available to you to price it right that's going to work for your business. And we start with the cost of doing business. And again, I have a video on this. Check that out. And we get in deep. But the bottom line on the cost of doing business is understanding, one, how much you want to make as a photographer. You're the biggest cost, labor. You have to understand all the little expenses that are involved. How about your phone? How about insurance? How about taxes? There are many different things that you need to consider as part of your cost of doing business. Transportation. So it's a lot more than your studio and equipment. It's life, it's everything, because your photography business is part of your life. So when we calculate the cost of doing business, it's very common to find that our average cost of doing business rate, day rate, is about somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 a day. Believe it or not. Now, if you have a lot of high volume work, maybe that cost comes down. But for a lot of people, it really is around, say, $1,500 a day. So we're going to work with that number. You may be much higher depending on where you live. Maybe you're in New York and that number needs to be much higher. Maybe you're somewhere in the Midwest and that number can be lower. The point is, it's different for everyone. And you have to focus on what is right for you. If you have to cut this number in half because you don't think you can earn new business at a $1,500 rate, that's fine. Cut it in half to $750. However, you will not be able to sustain that for a long period of time and you'll eventually go out of business. So you need to consider these things. Yes, it's true. Many people are also doing this as a part-time job. Maybe you have a full-time job or you don't need the income. However, if you have the dream of becoming a full-time photographer, then you need to make note of these numbers because you're not going to magically increase your rates to the level of becoming a full-time photographer with the flip of the switch. It takes a lot of work, especially if you've gained a brand and reputation and you have clients at a certain level. Well, you're not going to increase your rates on them very easily, and chances are they're referring you and they're letting other people know what you charge them. So those referrals are going to expect those lower rates, and the next thing you know, you have somebody saying, oh no thanks, I thought you were half the price. So you need to start off at the rate that is right for growing a full-time business if that is what you want. Now, if that's not what you want, that's fine. You can charge whatever you want. There is no rule behind this because the market is so saturated. There is every level of photography pricing, from the lowest of the low to the highest of the high. But you have to ask yourself, how can some photographers charge $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 a day when the supply and demand is so saturated? There's so much supply to the demand, and there's a lot of demand. You need to think about that. So we are in control of setting where we want to be in the marketplace because there's nobody else to compare to other than you, because your job is to go out there and find your community of people who like your work at your rate. Getting into the pricing of your photography, we start off with the cost of doing business, $1,500 a day for our example. However, you may need a much higher number, maybe 2 or 3 times that depending on where you live, such as New York. It's going to be much more expensive to live and work in New York versus maybe the Midwest where it's a lot less expensive. Maybe it's half this price. So only you really understand your circumstances and situation. So you have to create your number, but it doesn't stop there. The thing is, this is our starting point. There's some other elements we need to figure out when we're pricing our photography. Now, sometimes people ask us to photograph for an entire day, and that turns into what we call a day rate. And this is a baseline cost of doing business rate, but that's not necessarily our day rate. Our day rate comes with a few things, such as how are people going to use the images? And we're going to talk about that in a moment. How about the production and administration elements? Maybe there's travel involved. Maybe there's possibility of additional needs on set. Maybe there are location fees, scouting. There are many different things that could go into the production of your photograph. And of course, your brand. And that's probably one of the biggest elements when it comes to pricing photography. In other words, the photographers who charge a lot of money quite often are sitting on their brand to have that high of a photography price. I mean, the pricing is all over the place, down to the lowest of the low and the highest of the high, but you have to think about it. The photography business, the photography world is just saturated with photographers. And if we live on the world of supply and demand, then everybody should be really, really cheap. But photography can be a commodity. You can play the commodity game, which means you're going for the lowest price, you're just a photographer, or you're playing the branding game, meaning I am me, I am Rosh, you are you as photographer. Nobody has my eye, maybe nobody has my experience, certain skills, maybe in Photoshop, whatever it may be, whatever you combine that makes you, your unique success combination to brand yourself at a certain level. And that is why some photographers, even in an age where there are more photographers than need, that there are photographers who still charge $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 a day because of branding. And I'm going to show you how to add this to this number as we move forward. Let's talk use. When you take a photograph, when you click the shutter, you are now the instant owner, happy owner of a copyrighted image. Doesn't matter, you don't have to do anything else. Now, registering with the government, that's a good thing to do. You can go to copyright.gov and you can get all the information you need there. However, you don't have to do anything. You own that image. And like other people, other creatives, other writers, software designers, whatever it may be, we're part of this world in which people are commissioning us to use or create. So if somebody wants to hire you as a photographer, they're actually commissioning you, like they might commission an artist to create a painting. And you have to get your mind around that, whether you believe it or not. And there are people who just totally don't believe in all this and they just want to give everything away and away for free. That's fine. That's their business model. I don't think it's going to last very long. They're not going to be in business very long, but if that's their business model, again, I don't get mad at people who are of low prices or just want to give everything away for free. It really just doesn't matter because, again, the market is so saturated, it doesn't matter. You have one job, and that's to find your community of people who like your work, want you as a photographer, and are willing to pay your price. So when you have someone commission you, you have to understand that they need a usage package or a licensing package to actually use those images. And so you can add that to your base. And how do we understand how they're going to use this image or license this image? Let me clarify again. It's kind of like when you buy software from Adobe. You can't resell that software. You own that software. you have a license to use it. You don't actually own the code. And that's the same principle we're dealing with here. But how do we judge the price? That's the real question. And the question is, well, how much time do they want to use that image? Now, if it's personal, let's say a wedding, obviously that's personal use. It's forever, for the most part. They're going to use it, put it on their wall, put it in their albums, maybe share with friends and family. However, if somebody runs for Congress and they want to use one of your photographs from the wedding, that's a different use. And you need to be very clear with everybody how they use your images. And how you go about this is totally up to you. I mean, some people just don't care. Fine, run for Congress, I've already been paid. But that's not the best business practice. And that's what I'm trying to teach you here, the best business practices. So you have time, you have region. Where is this going to be used? Locally, regionally, like within a state or a few states or provinces or the entire country? How is that image going to be used? And all these elements could come into play. So you can consider time. The traditional time frame is 1 year North American use in the United States or Canada. Now, if you're in your country, you could say 1 year use for whatever, and I'm talking on a marketing level, 1 year use and wherever that region may be. But again, if it's personal, then it's probably just forever for personal use. But this is something to consider. Now, you could say 2 years. You can often ask people, how long do you plan? Again, we're in the commercial realm here, or the marketing realm. A lot of us take photographs for people for their websites, and they may keep those photographs up for 2 or 3 years, and that's fine. So, okay, if you update and change your website every 3 years, we'll give you 3 or 4 years usage. And that's not a bad way to go. Well, the big question is often, oh, well, that's great. So how do I actually add a price? How do I figure out the price for all of these things? Well, I recommend you decide on what your formula is in advance and always know. Now, some people will say, okay, for regional use or national use, I'll add $500. Maybe for distribution, which could be, you could base it off of 10,000 printed pieces or 50,000 web views. There are a number of ways you can approach distribution. How many eyeballs are going to see that image? You have to remember, the value is different for a little shop in the downtown district of your community, putting a photo that you created on a flyer on their window. The value of that image is much different than the value of a big company that's going to put the photo on billboards and magazines all over the world. Obviously, the value is different, and so you need to charge accordingly. So you aren't leaving money on the table, and you receive your fair value as part of what you helped this company do, which is earn more money with your photographs. So what you can do when you want to add, say, time, you could say, if somebody wants to use my photographs for more than a year, I'll add 10% to the price, which would be $150. So it would be $16.50 would be their price for, say, 2 years usage. Maybe you have 1 year already baked into that number. Or maybe you have a local use already baked into that number, your standard number. So if somebody wants to use your photographs nationally, well, then you could say, I increase my rates by 50% for national usage. I like to use percentages versus actual fixed numbers. I think it's a lot easier. I think it takes the emotion, much more the emotion out of pricing when you use percentages, because you can add a percentage to with all these things and you just know, look, this is a fair percentage. Other people have purchased these photographs using these percentages, and when you have a system down, you can just go to your sheet and say, okay, my $1,500 base, they want to use this on a website that has 1 million visitors, and in the case of over 1 million visitors, I will increase my price by 50%, 100%, whatever you want it to be. And so then it would be a $3,000 a day assignment. So these are the kinds of things you need to think about. You need to figure out what your percentage increase is for each situation. Now, there are different types of photography that you might jump into. Maybe food photography. What's your baseline for food photography? What's your baseline for architectural photography, portraits? Maybe you have a sitting fee, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. What I recommend that you do is create a document, put it in Google Drive, put it on your hard drive, wherever you want, that actually has the list of the types of photography that you do, that you're comfortable with. And in some cases, if you're not comfortable with a certain type of photography, maybe you have a list of people that you can refer and take a percentage, maybe a referral fee or a commission from that referral. That's up to you, however you wish to go about that, but that's one way you can continue to make more money while passing on work to other people. See, the thing is, I don't think you really want to do work that you're not comfortable doing, because if you mess it up, well, then that's your reputation. Now, in some cases, you can hire people to bring around you that can support you if you have a general idea of where you want to go, but maybe you want to hire an assistant that has worked with maybe celebrity photographers or automotive photographers or architectural photographers and has some good knowledge to support you, to even guide you through some of the process. There are many ways to approach all this, and honestly, we all face these situations. You're not alone. You're not alone. Even I have trouble once in a while, and quite honestly, I like to hand the information off to other people to, again, help take the emotion out of the pricing structure, because sometimes I really want that job, and I know that because of my emotional attachment to that opportunity, I'm better to pass it on to somebody else to actually do the numbers, because I'm going to be better off. So remember, emotion is probably our biggest enemy when pricing. So when we can create that list of the types of work that we're doing, the pricing, and then how much do we add times so much. And again, I recommend, it could be a fixed number, but I highly recommend you do a percentage. If somebody wants our photo for 5 years, we know that we times it by 3 or 4, 40% maybe. Or if it's a certain region, then we're going to increase it by 25%, and distribution over a certain amount or different levels. I often will do that at different levels, and then I know immediately. And then of course we have our production and admin. If we know that, look, certain types of photography have a higher production level, well, then we add a 10% fee because we know we're going to have more administration as part of that project. And another thing you can always do, and we're going to get into the per image pricing, which is my favorite form of pricing. We'll talk about that deeper, but if you have a situation where it's a volume scenario, well, you can always take that into account and maybe have the first day at a certain level and then multiple days it goes down, because volume does contribute to lower pricing. Because remember, this rate is based off of 4 days, and you don't have to. If you saw the cost of doing business video, we're basing off of 4 full days of work. So it's important to understand that this number can go down with additional days, and you're still making your solid cost of doing business and the profits in pricing properly. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go down an enormous amount based on the number of days, but maybe you give your client a little bit of a discount to stay competitive. That's up to you. When it comes to methods of pricing photography, you can look at a few different ways, such as daily or hourly or per project or per image, which is my favorite, and even the size of the image for fine artists. We'll talk about that in a moment. But daily is based off of our day rate, and some photographers like to use a day rate. I don't think it's the most efficient and best way to go about pricing photography unless it's an event. Maybe an event is a good way to go because you're kind of required to be there. You can't become more efficient, and you're not necessarily going to make more money with more photographs. Maybe reprints and selling other products down the road, but your actual time being there creating images, when you create more, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more or less for being there. So you have a day rate. Now you can cut that rate into 10, and photographers cut it into 10 because we have 8 hours of photography, 1 hour of setup, and 1 hour of breakdown, and that's why we have a 10-hour day. And so you can say hourly would be $150 an hour, or whatever we want to add in here. Maybe there's production and admin. Quite often events are local. Maybe there's not much in the way of additional, there may not be much more that you need to add to it, because quite often events are personal or maybe a corporate event, but a lot of times the photographs stay in-house or maybe in a press release or something like that. It just depends on the company. You have to know the scenario before you get into it. So daily, hourly, per project. If you have multiple types of photography or maybe additional services such as design or videography or writing as part of the photography project, you may want to consider project pricing, which is combining everything into one pricing, just saying, look, you get this list of items for this price. And that's not a bad way to go. Let's talk about per image pricing, one of my favorite methods, and let's compare it to the day rate. So a day rate is your base plus whatever maybe your brand, or let's just say, for sake of argument, that a business needs 10 new images for their website. And we'll make our baseline $1,500. It's a local business, and we'll say there are $500 worth of expenses. So that's $2,000 to create those 10 images over a day. Now, let's say you're really efficient. You get it all done early, and you're done at 2 o'clock. What do you think that business owner wants? Probably a discount, because you did not spend an entire day photographing those images. Now you can say, well, wait a minute, I have a contract, and you should have a contract that says, I'm going to be here a whole day. I saved a day for you. We got done at this time, but I've given you what you asked for, so you're going to have to pay the full day. You may legally be right, but you're not making a client very happy, and they're going to feel cheated. So giving them a discount may be in the cards. You also might want to consider the fact that maybe you could go on through the day to 5 o'clock and you work a full 10-hour day, maybe 6 o'clock, who knows, and you create more images. Maybe you create 15 really good images, but you're within that day rate, and so they get the images, and because of your high productivity and additional creativity, you don't get anything. You don't get anything more for it. You get a happy client, and that's a darn good thing. Let's not forget that. A happy client is certainly good, but you now have more work later. 50% more work in your post-production, and as we all know, our post-production is a big part of what we do. Another thing we need to be considering in our cost of doing business and our day rates and so forth, we need to know how much all this costs, and you've just given yourself more work for free. Now let's talk about going about this per image pricing. So we have $1,500 as our baseline, $500 in expenses. So rather than saying $2,000 a day and then wondering, wow, $2,000 a day, $1,500 fee, that's crazy. How about divide that by 10 and just say, $200 per image, how's that? That's a lot easier to swallow. That's a lot easier for people to digest. And so when you say $200 per image, and I like to say, and there's no bottom, if you don't like any of my work, you don't have to pay me anything. Now, you don't have to do that. I'm not suggesting you do that. That's just the way I work. You could say, look, minimum of 5 images. So you're guaranteed 1,000 out of that 2,000. Again, you can do it any way. You could say, look, you said 10 images, no matter what, it's 10 images. However, if there are additional images that we create, that's up to you. You can pay for them, but you don't have to. So these are things we need to think about. So $200 per image, let's say we get done at 2 o'clock. We're done at 2 o'clock, and the client is happy. Are they sad? Well, they're happy because we're off. We're done early, and they got their 10 images, and it's worked out, right? So nobody wants a discount when they get off early and got exactly what was required, which were 10 images. In other words, we took the value on the time, which is day rate, and put it on the image where it belongs. So remember, you're going to get a lot further with per image pricing. It's a win-win situation for everyone, because let's say you go into that other scenario where you're still working till about 5, but you create 15 images. All right, 15 images times 200 is what? $3,000. So now you're being paid for your time photographing as well as being paid for the post-production required for those additional 5 images. So it's a win-win for everyone, and they don't have to purchase those additional 5 unless maybe they agree to it on set. It doesn't matter. You are in control of the situation. You need to stay in control. You could also combine per image pricing with a foundation of a daily rate. Some people do that, or hourly rate plus per image. You can have any combination you want. Maybe a base project rate. You could a creative fee. There are a number of ways you can do it. There is no right or wrong answer as long as you're covering your cost of doing business and the value based on your time, region, distribution, and so forth. Let's talk about the size of your print. This is very common for artists, but also for digital downloads. So you need to think about people who are going to use the image for a website, it's small, or they're going to print it. You need to consider what percentage you're going to add as the price increases on that digital download. Now, if you're an artist and maybe you're creating a canvas, you could consider what are the costs for that canvas. So maybe it's $25 for creating a specific size canvas of your print. Well, you can then decide, okay, whatever that cost is, I'm going to double it or triple or quadruple. You can decide, or you have another percentage. We'd like to work with percentages. So all of my costs I increase by 500%. So if it costs me $100, that canvas will now be for sale for $500. Whatever you want to do. But there's another way I like to go about it, and that's to work per inch. So I know that an image that is 10 by 10 is 100 square inches. So if I said $1 per square inch, well then that would be $100. And then I can increase it accordingly. Maybe down the road I now say, all of my canvases are $1.25 per square inch. So that 10 by 10 would now be $125. Again, now taking some of the emotion out of the process and just going by the numbers. And when you need to increase your rates, you just increase it by a percentage, and there you go. You have a good system for different size prints, and it doesn't matter what size it is, what size the print is, what size the canvas is, you just figure it out by the square inch. There are many ways in which photographers use fees. For example, if someone comes into your studio and sits in front of your lens, you could charge a sitting fee, and this would cover some of your base expenses. Or maybe you have an admin fee for complex jobs, or a production fee. Maybe you have location fees or travel days or fees for rain days, whatever you wish. It all depends on the type of photography that you do. So take a look at some of the basic expenses that you know you're going to have to absorb no matter what happens. Take the time to examine your business. There may be some legitimate fees that you should charge, or make sure they're included in your cost of doing business. It's important to remember the value of our time after the assignment. Photographers can spend hours, if not days, on our photographs after we've created them, and that time and expense needs to be covered. Now, some photographers charge editing fees or touch-up fees or post-production fees, and those are just fine. And whether you're doing the work yourself or hiring it out, that expense needs to be covered. And that expense should be in the price of your photography. Let's talk about your copyright, the value of your copyright. It has value. No matter if you're in the beginning of your career or a 20-year veteran, it has value. How do I know? Because if it didn't, then people wouldn't be asking for it or requiring it. Of course it has value. They wouldn't want it if it didn't have value. So you have to remember that basic fact. So think about how you're going to charge for that. Maybe you increase your rate by 25%, 50%, 100%. It's very common for photographers to charge 100%. Maybe it would cost $2,000 normally, but if they want to buy the copyright, it's $4,000. And you can let them know that they are purchasing the copyright. It was a requirement. Now, if you see the words work made for hire in a contract, well, that means they want to hire you, because if you work for somebody else, you represent them, and you use their equipment and you're getting a 401k, their paid vacation, salary, then you are representing them and they own the copyright. So if you work within a company, no, they own the copyright. But if you see the words work made for hire and you're a freelancer or independent professional, they're saying we want to hire you, take all the rights, and then fire you when you're done. That's what that means. Doesn't sound fair, does it? Well, it really is not. So you need to understand what you're getting into, and also look for situations where you are liable if anything goes wrong with the photograph. There are a lot of situations out there with different agencies that are really putting it on the photographer. So make sure you understand what you're getting into. Make sure you create estimates, make sure you create contracts, and make sure that you have everything in writing and that everybody understands what the expectations are at the end of the photography assignment. That's going to make all the difference in the world. Understanding expectations. If you can do that, you're going to be in good shape. And ask a lot of questions. Ask people as many questions you could possibly think of to help you estimate how much it's going to cost. And even ask them what images that they see on your website that they thought were the kinds of images that they want for their final image. That's going to give you an idea of the production level that's required to create that image. Now, if you don't have an exact image on your website or in your portfolio, well, then ask them to find other images that they think are the kinds of images they would want. And you can understand a little bit better once you see those images, the level of production. That is how a lot of photographers get caught. They don't understand the level of production that their client is looking for. Again, expectations. Ask a lot of questions. It's going to help you to determine the best price to give them, and then understanding, okay, what is that use? What is that production? What is necessary to create the image that your client wants? I know this is a big topic, so if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Hey, I'll see you in the next video to grow your photography business using the Marketing Sillars system.